And what struck me as this conversation continues is what Dr. Thomas said, and that is finding purpose. And the purpose many times is in the pain we have gone through. And the story, the identity, the equity, the documentation will continue to evolve. But in relation to storytelling, and where even in business, is what your purpose is in a season many times relates to the pain, and I relate that to my work.
Okay, now there is a sickness that is going on among us as African diaspora and also Africans in Africa. It's called identity crisis. That we are lost. We are lost because we are not tracing ourselves back where we are coming from. Because those that have been before us have left a lot of signs, lots of evidence of their life. But we haven't paid enough attention to understand, to read the signs of time, to get the message that they left behind. Because they left message for us.
Resilience is a defining characteristic of the African diaspora. Resilience. This is evident in both historical and modern contexts, from overcoming slavery and colonization to thriving in new environments. These stories of resilience are powerful. Additionally, the diaspora has contributed significantly to global culture and society through technological advancements and social movements. Celebrating these successes showcases the innovation and strength of our communities.
I'm Obehi Ewanfoh, the host of the African Diaspora Storytelling Series. Every 2 weeks, we meet up on LinkedIn to talk about different ways we can leverage the power of storytelling as people of African descent. Now, this is it. We are uniting millions of Africans in the diaspora through the power of our story. It does sound like what you are interested in. Make sure to subscribe to this channel and share this video with your friends who might need it. Now, back to today's conversation. Time is important for us. We agree that we are going to be here today, so we are here. And we're going to be talking about how to reshape generational story. And this, of course, is part of our series, which is the Diaspora Storytelling Series. Now, for those of you who do not know me, my name is Obehi Ewanfoh. I am the author of The Storytelling Mastery. And what I do in business is that I help individuals who are purpose-driven, of course, entrepreneurs who are purpose-driven to own their story so they can use it to attract the right audience. We believe that this is the best way to do business in this day and age. So that instead of you just selling all the time, help people to know who you are by talking about yourself, your story. By the time you own your story, like I say quite often, you expose yourself to the world. And of course, at that point, some people can leave, which is a good thing because you are not serving everybody. But some people will stay because your story will resonate with people. Because story always resonates with people. It doesn't resonate with everybody, but it will resonate with some people. And those are the people you really want. And when that happens, it becomes easy for you to deal with those people, to serve them, because we are here to serve. Now, when I got to Italy in the August of 2004, at the point I started to ask myself, but who are the people that I'm going to meet here now in terms of the people of African descent in the city where I live, which is in Verona. So being a curious person, I just started to interview people, started to talk to people that have been here very many years before I came. So I started asking them, what has been your experience? What have you done? What is your motivation? Why did you come here? Which, of course, in the course of the research, I find people that got to this place because there was a war in their country, so they just basically have to run away from their country. Then I met some people who came here because somebody told them that Europe is a good thing. So, you know, or the saying of the greener pasture. So the pasture is always greener in the neighbor's yard. So you run away from your home, even though there is no war in your country. Then, of course, there are people that came through family reunion and all sort of things. Then I remember I also met some people, some students at the time. Of course, at the time I was interviewed, and they are men married with their children, but they came here as students. They got scholarship. They got to Italy for this reason. So there were diverse people that I have to meet, and each of course, each of them have their different experiences. They have a different way of growing up and what they have learned along the way. And it was really very colorful and beautiful, if I must say. So after more than 10 years of doing this research, at finally 2023, I thought of it that it was important to share this experience with people, which is actually the idea of storytelling. How do you leverage the power of storytelling in what you do? So that is how the book series came about, the Storytelling Mastery. Initially, it was supposed to be a book, but like I just said, it's something that I've been putting together for more than 10 years. So it was pretty difficult for me to make that just a small book. So I have to break it down after I've written it to small books so that you can easily pick it up and just read through it. So this today now, that is conditioning everything that I do. That I didn't even know that storytelling was this powerful. And now that I know of it, I'm never going to do any other thing in my life. I am going to be talking about storytelling because I find it to be essential, most powerful instrument that we have in the world. So today, we are talking about one of the ways to use the power of storytelling, because we use it in business, we use it in the military, and also in the ministry. We use it in the club, we use it in politics, we use it in economy. We use it to build a people, to build community, but we also use it to destroy a people, to build the image of an enemy, and also to build the image of a friend. We can use it to destroy a home, but we can also use it to build a home. Which they say, therefore, that storytelling is not just good or bad, it's an instrument. Every instrument is up to you, how you want to use it. It's like having a knife. A knife is not good or bad. You can take a knife and peel an apple and eat. That is a good thing. But you can also use the knife to kill yourself or kill another person. That is a bad thing. It is not the knife that is bad. It is what you make use of. It's how you use it. So this is how storytelling is too. In case somebody is wondering, can storytelling actually be used for bad thing? Let me share a snippet of a story with you. You see, in Germany, up until say in the year leading up to the Second World War, everybody was living in peace. You can call it like that. Everybody was living like normal society, until somebody decided to create a different image. That image that is created, of course, you know the story, led to the death of up to 6 million people, according to statistics by some people. Now, what does that mean? It means now that the people that have been living together as workers, as husband, as wife, as neighbor, as people that are just living normal life together, come to accept that that individual that was one day your friends is no longer your friend, is now an enemy, so that you can then report him or her to the police to come and arrest him. A few days later, they will find himself in a detention camp, facing life and death. How did that happen? What about Africa? Do you remember the story of Rwanda, the genocide? You see, Hutus and Tutsis, they are just neighbors. But somebody managed to get them to believe that these are actually cockroaches. By the time the image of a cockroach is sold into the mind of those that will kill them, killing them become easy, become easily justifiable. If you go into the field of military, that is how it is done too. Otherwise, how is it possible for you to justify the fact that you take a gun and just shoot somebody or shoot millions of people? How do you do that? You use story to build that image. But of course, you can also use storytelling to build up a people for good. Just as story has been used to destroy us, it can also be used to build us, which is to say, it's up to us what we do with this awesome power. It's a powerful instrument. And today we are looking at how do we use storytelling to shape our experience, or how to reshape our generational story so that we can use it to build ourselves.
Thank you, Obehi. Thank you for having me here today. My name is Yemi Majekodumi. I'm an entrepreneur, a life coach to widows and single professional women from age 40, navigating relationship loss. And my take on this is it's very empowering, just what you've shared, Obi. Even though I'd made points, you've given me so many more ideas to add to the points. But my take on this is the focus on shaping generation stories has to start from uniting people, all people. But within that all people, we have to identify our differences. So the three areas I would mention today is about identity, equity, and documentation. Those are three powerful ways to unite our communities and to shape our generation. So my story from the work I do, when you were speaking, Obi, what came in my spirit was, as a young person, I'd always wanted to be in the legal profession, but somehow, through my destiny, I became an advocate of people. So being a coach, and before being a coach, I'd always coached people, counseled, therapy. One way or the other, I empowered the voiceless. So my work has been in mental health. And from what you are saying today, what we're talking about today, I can even see how my story has formed and how I've used it to build community. So when I talk about identity, for example, I tend to say I was born in England, then had the opportunity to live in Nigeria for 10 years. And then I came back here and I've been here ever since, studying and working. Whilst my parents before me, they came in the 60s with the intention to study and go back home, and that's what they did. However, for me, I've had the opportunity to blend two cultures: the English culture, I'm based in the United Kingdom, and the West African culture, which is Nigeria in origin. But the beauty of this is to survive and to unite relating to this topic in identity. It's very important to know who you are and appreciate the beauty of whatever cultures you're combining. And even in the work I do, I implement that in my life coaching, especially to my client, well, to every client group I've worked with. Because in my mental health profession, I worked with every client. But at the moment, as an entrepreneur, I work with women 40 plus. But it's about embracing who you are, accepting who you are, the beauty in your parents' culture. Who are you? What are your core values? What do you believe in? What do you own? What good do you hold on to in your present and in your present geographical location, which mine is the United Kingdom? And what do I love from my parents' culture? I blend all together, and that's what makes me a person. So that's one thing I use to give my story. Number two, equity. Equity in terms of generational stories is no matter where we find ourselves in from the African diaspora, we have to believe that wherever we are located, we have to advocate for equality for all. Because when we are Africans from the diaspora, or wherever people are from the diaspora, we tend to be the minority. So it's important to not be defined as a minority, but to acknowledge that the fact that you're domiciled wherever you should be able to access equal services as anyone else in your host country. And unfortunately, there are times when the perception of man, that means wherever we are located, it can impact our mindsets. And that's why coaching is so empowering, because many of us who are from the African diaspora, because of us being minorities, unconsciously, it can label your mindset. But as a Christian, I find that enables me, and through my work, to work with women to break that barrier. And number three, documentation. Everything we do in the African diaspora, wherever we are located, is important to document what we do, what our forefathers did. Why do we do this? Because you find, like with me, I find as much as I've lived in the United Kingdom for so many years, there's a lot of beauty in things. I had my mom staying with me for a few years. So a lot of things she reminded me of. I document them. When I write them down, I share them to my children, because documentation allows us to pass on to other generations and to the beauty of wherever we have come from and where we are living, and the beauty of what we add to where we are domiciled as well. So that's in a nutshell. I pass it back to you, Obi.
Thank you so much, Yemin. You see, that is a very powerful presentation there. It is really lovely. Of course, we are happy to have you here, and we are happy that you are part of the team. And we are also happy that you are adding value to the community. Because the African diaspora community, which is actually hundreds of millions of people, are in need of people who can help. You see, you talk of some points that are really fundamental to us, talking about documentation, for example. Now, this is what I've learned from that, of course, based on my research too, that if we document our passes, we help people that are going to come after us. Because whether you like it or hate it, other people are going to come after us. We are not the last one, and we are not the first one, of course. But if we document our experiences, which, by the way, mean explaining to the people how we have overcome our challenges. Now, when the new people that are coming in, they will know what to do. They will not be confused. They will not be the Johnny just come. So we owe it to these people to explain what have happened to us, our passes. And if we were to take this argument again to where we are coming from, which is our source, our home, Africa, and in Nigeria to be specific, I've seen a very big lacuna in that we just leave our elders to die like that without putting down their memory. I think we need to harvest their memory and put it down for people to learn from. There is a saying among many Africans that when an elder dies, a library is burned down. Sometimes we don't really take cognizance of the importance of that saying. Because if we do, we will be conscious of what we do with those that are among us, because they are the one that will die tomorrow. Just like we, the living, are the one that will die tomorrow. Of course, we become the ancestors because we are in a journey. We didn't start this, and we're not going to end it. For the sake of those who are going to be here tomorrow, we need to document our passes. There are many people who have done extraordinary things in our community. Now, I think that we need to really understand that we have special privileges for those of us who are able to write, who are able to document, whether you are doing it in form of music, writing poetry, or just tell a story, even though you are not able to document it digitally, but you are able to talk. Each of us is given a special gift. What are we doing with that to make sure that we are participating in this big mission of making sure that we are extending the legacy? I think I will look for a way to come back to this conversation again because it is important, that documentation. I've seen elders that have died in my place whom, if we have their story written down, we will benefit from it in a very big way. But we did it. It's not because we are not capable, literally speaking, physically speaking, and technically speaking. I still do not understand why we didn't do that. Of course, we have project that is looking into that, and it is important. We need to keep hammering this idea that it is us that will do the work. It is our job to do this work. Nobody else is going to do it. I think if we approach it from that perspective, now we will do the work. All right, now let me pass the mic to Reverend Gloria Tino, who is also doing an important work within the community. Please share with the people who you are, what you do, and your first take in this conversation. Please go.
Thank you, my brother Obehi, and welcome, Sister Yemi. Lovely presentation, very powerful. Connected with that. Hello, Sister Marcia, and welcome to everybody who is in the room. Lovely to have you. I feel your presence already. My name is Gloria Tinu Ogunbadejo. I'm a Nigerian from the Yoruba culture. I'm an ordained minister, psychotherapist, writer, and ancestral healing coach or practitioner. I support women ministers who want to add spirituality to their ministry, and I offer a holistic and bespoke program for my ideal client to go on an ancestral lineage healing journey with me. Through this experience, they will identify their ancestors, strengthen their identity, heal any intergenerational traumas and patterns showing up in their lives, gain a greater clarity in their life, purpose, direction, and destiny, liberate themselves on a cellular level, making changes from their deepest core, ultimately leading to a more balanced harmony, having more balance and harmony and peace in their lives. So, this wonderful topic, how to reshape generational stories, blending traditional narratives with contemporary experiences, highlighting resilience and innovation. It blew my mind. I thought, okay, where do I start with this? I can go with a lot of personal stories, but typical of me, I will go around the houses. I just had a broad spectrum look at all the different aspects of this topic. And storytelling, I started with storytelling in Yoruba culture is a powerful tool for teaching, healing, and um, persevering, preserving history. Oral traditions have long been a cornerstone of African cultures, and traditional storytellers in West Africa have been crucial in preserving history, culture, and genealogy. African folk tales, for instance, often featuring animals with human traits, convey moral lessons and cultural values. For instance, Anansi stories from the Akan people of Ghana. It features a trickster spider, and it imparts wisdom about cunning, resourcefulness, and humility. In the Yoruba traditions, we have the fable tales of the tortoise, which we call Ijakwa. I think always Ijakwa or Ajakwa. I think it's Ijakwa. Sister Yemi can correct me on that. And these tales are rich in culture and moral lessons. The tortoise tales, for instance, are a means of preserving and transmitting cultural values and ethics. They often highlight important virtues such as wisdom, patience, cleverness, and humility. Simple stories about humanity that are made humorous with, with clever plots and unexpected twists, but very effective. This is the power of good storytelling. For instance, the tortoise used his cleverness to solve problems or escape dangerous situations, teaching the value of intelligence and wit. The story also typically contains a moral lesson that is conveyed through the actions and outcomes experienced by the tortoise and other characters. A quick example: the tortoise, of a story of the tortoise where the tortoise decides to eat all the food in the pot at a feast, thinking he's so smart, and he gets stuck in the pot. And this just teaches the consequences of greed and selfishness. I mean, for a child, these are very valuable stories. But as adults, we can translate these stories for how we conduct ourselves too. The tortoise is often portrayed as a trickster character, embodying wisdom and folly. With this topic, there's so many ways to preserve um, our experiences, our stories, highlighting resilience and innovation. Songs and music are integral to storytelling, often used in ceremonies and rituals to pass down traditions and histories. The African diaspora encompasses a wide range of experiences, from those who migrated willingly to those who were forced through slavery and colonization. Stories that convey moral lessons, resilience, and the power of the human spirit, providing inspiration and comfort. Integral, traditional, and contemporary narratives, preserving and reviving traditional ways of being. When you think about some of the stories that already have been documented, like Harriet Tubman and the Underground Railroad showcases, it showcases incredible resilience and determination. The Maroons in Jamaica, and Sister Marta, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I understand that they established independent communities after escaping slavery, and this is an inspiring narrative to further inspire modern movements for autonomy and self-determination. And we know our dear sister Chimanda, and I'm sure I've mispronounced the name, she writes beautifully fiction stories about experiences of Africans in the diaspora. Blending traditional narratives with contemporary experiences allows for the creation of new stories that reflect the current realities of the diaspora. These new narratives can address modern challenges while honoring cultural heritage. As we look at the African diaspora today, we see a tapestry of diverse experiences shaped by migration, identity, and the blending of cultures. Globalization and technology have given rise to new forms of storytelling, which is amazing. Modern narrative expressed through literature, music, art, and film address current issues like racism, inequality, and cultural integration. These contemporary stories are vital in understanding the evolving identity of the African diaspora. I know my brother said, how have we managed not to document all the stories of our elders? But what they didn't do, we are doing it now. But we still have ways of capturing some of those old stories, and we can see it in the contemporary scholars and how the writers, how they're using those stories in their present day narratives. Maintaining our cultural heritage while embracing new experiences is crucial. Innovative approaches to storytelling allow us to merge traditional and contemporary narratives seamlessly. Resilience is a defining characteristic of the African diaspora. Resilience. This is evident in both historical and modern contexts, from overcoming slavery and colonization to thriving in new environments. These stories of resilience are powerful. Additionally, the diaspora has contributed significantly to global culture and society through technological advancements and social movements. Celebrating these successes showcases the innovation and strength of our communities. Connecting with ancestors and understanding their stories of resilience can inspire people to overcome contemporary challenges. I'm reminded of, I've just recently been through some very challenging situations, and at the point of almost despairing, I was reminded of some of the stories my grandfather told me, which was almost 50 years ago. I couldn't believe how I remembered those stories, how he told me just very lightheartedly of things that he went through. And for just a split second, while I was at a point of weeping, I thought to myself, I've got my grandpappy's blood in my veins. Of course I can get through this. I come from warriors. I come from powerful people, people who went through all kinds of things. I come from people who were healers. Of course, I am a part of that lineage. I will get through this. And yes, I am getting through it. So this is just my beginning intake of this topic. I'll pass over the mic to you.
Thank you so much for that. That is really enriching. It's really enriching this input too. Of course, we know that good value are what the people here are getting, and that is what they are supposed to get, and that is what we promise them. And I'm happy that we are doing this. This is really very important. This is important. You see, now, because you know who your ancestors are, which is by extension, you know where you are coming from, you know who you are, uh, whose daughter you are. Whatever challenge is thrown at you, you have a different way of responding to that. I think somebody need to write that down, because if you don't know who you are, the son and daughter of who you are, you will walk in the world differently, because the knowledge of yourself uh, suddenly give you a kind of antidote to walk in this world, to live in this world. There was a film, I think it was done in 2015 or 2005, if I'm not mistaken. It was a film talking about a revolution in the United Kingdom. The name of the film is V for Vendetta. So the guy that was wearing the mask, who actually initiated the revolution at the point, talked to the power that be when it was a time for the show that it was about to be killed. Actually, he dead then a very deep blow, telling them that you see the mask that you are, because he was wearing the mask. He said that beneath this mask are ideas, and that ideas are actually bulletproof. And he actually managed to kill the people that were about to kill him. And then, of course, the revolution started. So that the people put together, pulled down any obstacle that was on them. So what I am learning from that is that if we know who we are, it doesn't mean that we're not going to have challenges. We're still going to have challenges, but the way we face those challenges are going to be different than when we don't know who we are. So the knowledge of who we are is fundamentally important. That is what we are talking about today. Our generational story, the story of our fathers, the story of whose shoulder we are standing on. You see, it is said that we can see far ahead of us because we are standing on the shoulders of giants. It is the story of those giants that we are talking about. Those giants are our ancestors, those who have been here before us. There is a good example that I usually give in line with this when we are talking about this storytelling. In that I grew up in a village in Esan, in southern Nigeria. Going to the farm, I still remember vividly the footpath that we will need to travel from the village to the farm and then return. And when I look at that road, that very tiny road that we need to walk, trek, you see that that road is an evidence that somebody have passed that place before. That road is a story. That road signifies the fact that you don't need to construct a new road. There is a road that is already created for you because you are going to a place. It is the story of the people who created that road that we are talking about, because there is a track for you to take. You are not going to build everything now, everything you are just new. No. That is the importance of me writing the book of the experiences of the African that I met here in northern Italy, in the city where I live, so that when somebody come, you need to know the story of the people that have been here before you. What have they done? What has been their experiences? Because when you know, of course, you shape the reality according to how you want it, but at least shape it based on the fact that you already know what is possibly can happen here. Another way of looking at that is, imagine that you are passing through a tunnel. You know, the tunnel is always dark, at least in most of the places or in most of the situation. When you are in the tunnel, you don't know what is going to be in the other part of it. Sometimes you look at that is the end of life. Only that it is not the end of life, but you don't know. What if after you pass through the tunnel, you have the experience, you know what is inside the tunnel? You can write your experiences, letting the people know what is in the tunnel. The difference this will make is that the new people that are entering into the tunnel, based on the knowledge that they've gotten thanks to you, because you have passed through the tunnel, therefore you are a pioneer. Those who are starting, those who are making the way, those who are showing the way, they will pass through that tunnel in a different kind of light. But what if you never tell them? They will enter not knowing, they are blind, not knowing whether, they don't know what is going to happen in the tunnel. So going back to what Yemi was saying before, it is fundamentally important that within the African diaspora and also in Africa, that we take the time to put down this memory. Let's share what have happened to us. It's going to help somebody out there. Storytelling, using story to shape our narrative is fundamentally important. All right, with that, I pass the mic to Dr. Matia. Dr. Matia, thank you so much for being here. Of course, we are always very proud of you. So tell the people who you are and what is your first take on today's conversation, using storytelling or how to reshape our narrative through story. Please take it from here.
Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, good night, depending on where we're from. For me, it's early morning. I want to join in welcoming all those who are with us. I see a lot of persons that are valuable to us in our discussion. I want to welcome and say how honored I am to be beside Gloria every week, and then now to have Yemi join us. And thank you always for the invitation, Obi. I think this might just be, if not my final point, I think the next point will come at the edge of my moving on. I have an appointment today, and so I have to leave at 10 o'clock. I look at the topic every time, and I look at where we are coming from and how far we have come. And I look at the journey and the joys and the sorrows and the complexities and the surprises in between, because all of those make up our stories. But that is life. Everybody has a story, regardless of your generation. The main thing for me is that those who come behind us, regardless of where we find ourselves in the generation, must find us faithful. And so reshaping our stories is extremely important for me in three ways. The first is, what is your reference point? Because if you don't know who you are, you will never know what you are destined to do, and how you serve will be fake, counterfeit, because you're serving from an uncertain, very stuttering, and very stagnant space, because those gaps in you must be filled for you to step and press into your purpose, which was given to you through your generational lineage and the experiences that came with you being born into this family or generation, whether by default or choice. And so we want to understand that framework. The next reference point that I want to talk about when I talk about reference point is your pain. The pain, your greatest pain, becomes the foundation of your stories, because it is from that pain that your purpose and your ministry is usually born. And when you talk about to people, when you talk about the KFC story, when you look at the Apple story, when you look at the Google story, when you look at the Caribbean stories, when you look at those foundations, and the African stories are born out of great pain and resilience and overcoming and survival. And that is the theme of the diaspora storytelling, the theme of resilience, of the growth mindset, of courage, of determination, infatigable hope. Those are themes that must be preserved as we reshape our story. So, the next part that I want to look at now, what does it, as it relates to my reference point that I talk about, what does your generation mean to you? And when we look at the energy that surrounds my specific generation, what is it that is sacred enough to be preserved? The good. What is good that must be preserved? And what is bad that must be preserved, as a reference point to always look at how far we have come and be grateful and empowered to keep moving forward. Because that is the reference for me, is extremely important for us to reshape our stories, because my mother's generation is different from my generation. But when she tells the story of why she is resolute in her core values, why she will not change this tradition, why she will not get rid of a particular artifact, make us develop and create our own artifacts from that experience, and also create our own experience that is always aligned to that experience. Because, as they say in Jamaica, blood is thicker than water. And you cannot take back your mother and put her in a store to say exchange, she has expired or she's not good. She has no longer good. You can't take your grandparents back into any supermarket. You cannot take them back into God and say reshape them. You are born and you have to accept your reference point. Your reference point does not necessarily become your residence, because as generations evolve, they learn new things, they embody their own stories, they shape their own stories, they integrate the insights of the past, and they reframe their narrative. and also challenge assumptions. So that is the first point. The second point for me, as it relates, so maybe someone needs to write down the reference point, because we have to have a reference point to reshape our story, because it would have had an original shape, and the shaping can be expanded, or it can be altered, or it can be adopted, or it can get a 3D dimension where you build on it is the same shape. It doesn't change in that way, but it changes in volume and impact and influence, and it changes in illumination. It is illuminating. So let's go now. So after we understand our reference point, we want to look at reframing. How do we reframe the narrative? And notice what I say, reframe, because we are not changing the narrative, we are reframing the narrative so it fits into my context, my situation, the inspiration that I need, the motives, and also the handling. What do I mean by the handling? How I carry this sacred treasure determines my mindset. So do I see the obstacles and the struggles and the challenges and the pain? Do I see them? Do they make me bitter? Do they make me ashamed? Do they make me feel less than? Do they make me always want to seek for the approval of others and want others to love me? Do I feel inadequate all the time? Because the reframing, every time I look at the narrative, the narrative affects me in that way. Or do I look at how far I've come with the same narrative and see the opportunities, the possibilities, and my take and place in making sure that the reframing of this narrative becomes positive? How do I see myself in the reframing? And as I reframe, how do I identify the story? How do I recognize what has been passed down and how it has influenced my life? How do I examine the impact on how it has the impact on my beliefs and my values and behaviors? Because reshaping stories is not just documentation, it is how we carry those stories in our spirits and how we pass on that the energy of those stories into our overcoming. And so we want to understand that reframing involves a physical reframing, a mental reframing, a spiritual reframing, and an emotional reframing. And we need to understand that as we adjust and as we walk that path of reframing, that there are things that we will have to embrace, there are things that we will have to accept, there are things that we have to relearn, there are things that we will have to unlearn, and there is an embodiment that makes it align with us, who we were, who we are, and who we will become. So we live in that alignment, and as we live in that alignment, we document. One of the greatest forms of documentation, and documentation is the third one for me. One of the greatest forms of documentation is telling the truth. What is the truth? Accepting our flaws, imperfections, our strengths, our weaknesses, our triggers, and all, and putting it down on paper in journals. Journals are the most authentic and organic form of reshaping our stories, because when we pull from those journals, we experience the same emotions again, and they are illuminated because of our maturity, because of our age, because of our new experience, because of our overcoming. And so the documentation serves to heal, to empower, to transform, to correct, and to magnify why we are here. So we are able to show up in writing, physically, mentally, spiritually, holistically, is what I'm really saying, unapologetically. If there are gaps, we will not be able to reshape. We will always produce counterfeits. And that is why we must tell our children who we are and make them accept or reject the parts of the story that does not resonate with them. Because when we take them out of their baptism and put them into a different set of waters, into the deep blue sea, then we must understand that their survival mechanisms will make them forget sometimes what is it that they are carrying. And it is always this reshaping that helps us to remind them so that nothing is lost all is preserved and carried with the dignity that I will tell you the parts of the story that are relevant at each time, but I will never destroy the whole story. I will never reject the narrative, because that is the composite parts of me that I choose to use because I have that power. Because I'm able to reshape, I have that power, that authority that comes from being who I was before I was born, who I am because I was born into this generation, and who we will become because of what and how I see what I'm carrying. Thank you so much for allowing me to share.
It's really a full lecture. You see, these are really beautiful. You know what I'm also very happy about is that we are able to record this conversation, and they are going to be available for many years to come. And this is a part of what we do in aClasses Media, in that we are intentionally putting down the record of our experiences. Well, somebody might not see the value in it just now, but I want to remind us that this is invaluable. I mean, you cannot quantify the importance of this. Dr. Master, you see, you were with me when I presented the biography about my brother a couple of months ago. When I was presenting that book, I was really, really very emotional. And this is despite the fact that I've written a number of books. I've presented my books in different places, including universities, cultural centers, and school here in Italy. But when I was presenting this particular book, I was really, really emotional. But it was a good thing. I really feel very happy about it. But of course, why was it? Why was I emotional? I was emotional because I was talking about my family, and talking about my family in a way that I haven't talked about it before. Now, in that book, I make mention of the fact that this book, even though actually I wrote it about my eldest brother, because I appreciate what he has done for us as a family, the sacrifices that he made, the contribution that he made to the Ewanfoh family, and to me personally in a particular sense. But I wasn't writing this book just for him. I'm writing this book, or I was writing the book because in the past, uh, because I want to preserve his name. I want people to refer to this book later in the future and ask the question, but who was this man? By then, we are no longer alive. You see, we have the chance to be able to make a dent in the universe, to be able to present ourselves the way we want to present it. This is the power of story. It is powerful in that somebody is going to reshape a narrative based on what we are doing today, based on the story, based on the experiences that we are sharing today. We need to be intentional about this. These things, money cannot buy it. I want to repeat that. What we are doing today, money cannot buy it. Now, one historian said that while a lot of archaeologists are running around the world looking for secret things, it's because those things are being put down by somebody, and because they have passed through time, it becomes valuable. Because a lot of people that are living today, we don't document their experiences, which means with the passage of time, their memory will fade away. Very soon, we don't even know who they are anymore. But what if there can be a record of their experiences so that their generation after them, many, many years after, can trace themselves back and say, my father's father, he said this. Therefore, he was with this. This was his point of view. Because technology will change. Today, we're talking of ChatGPT, AI, and all of that. Many people think this is the higher that we can have. I say, hey, cool down. A couple of weeks ago, I brought in 5 neuroscientists in a webinar that we organized in aClasses Media to talk about the role of neuroscience in storytelling, the working of our mind in storytelling. And of course, we're going to do a lot of this webinar in the future also. What I'm saying by that is, as the time passes, things are going to change, but nothing is going to happen to our story. How do I know that? Just look back again to story. You see, those painting, those drawing, those writing, those documentation that were done by ancient Egyptians thousands of years ago, they are still valuable today because that is how we manage to understand them. That is how we manage to understand who they are. You see, recently, people discover the working of the Nok culture, central Nigeria, dating back to thousands of years. But what does that mean? What value does that have to us? We are living in the jet age now. Oh, it have a lot of value. If we understand who our ancestors are, we will know how to shape ourselves. Dr. Marcia is saying we need to shape our narrative according to how it makes sense to us. She didn't say we need to invent the narrative. She said we need to shape it. But how we shape it? We are shaping it based on what we know, based on what have been before us. But what if those before us didn't say anything, they didn't document anything? They were just living in the bubble like we are today, just living in the bubble from click to click without deciding to make a reflection. It is because those people that created those ports, central Nigeria, the Nok people thousands of years ago, they decided to do that, that today we are making reference to them. That those that live in the time of ancient Nubia and ancient Egypt decided to put down their thoughts. That's what we are thinking about them today. That is what Christianity is based upon. The Abrahamic religion is based on ancient Egypt. And that is what science, technology is based on too. That sometimes some people in the Dogon, they were exploring the universe, exploring the star that NASA couldn't wrap their mind about until recently. What did they do if they never said anything about it? How could we know that? These are fundamental things that we need to do as a people to trace who we are. Because if we don't do that, okay, now there is a sickness that is going on among us as African diaspora and also Africans in Africa. It's called identity crisis. That we are lost. We are lost because we are not tracing ourselves back to where we are coming from. Because those that have been before us have left a lot of signs, a lot of evidence of their life. But we haven't paid enough attention to understand, to read the signs of time, to get the message that they left behind. Because they left message for us. And this message, of course, I didn't say they wrote it in a book of A4. That is not what I'm saying. But they wrote it in different ways because they live in different time. It is up to us to decode their time. Because when we understand who they were, the message they left for us, then, like Dr. Marcia is saying, we will reshape that narrative according to our time, according to the relevance of our time. You see, what we are doing now, this recording that is done today, 29th of July, 2024, is going to be available even 500 years from now. But it's not going to be available in the same way that we are consuming information. People are going to transform in the way that they consume information. They're going to reshape this narrative, not according to how I see it now, but according to how it makes sense to them. The importance of us doing it now is that we help them to have a frame of reference. So we don't need to underestimate what we are doing here. We don't need to underestimate the fact that we should go into the community and try to mop out what we can to learn about the people. Because all the information are there. We need to do something about it to help ourselves and to help also others that are going to come. This is fundamentally important. Now with that, I want to go to Yemi. Yemi, I like the work that you are doing. Of course, each of us need to work from a different vantage point, from our calling, because we have calling. I was interviewing a professor of transpersonal psychology in London. His name is Professor Oluwafemi. Okay, he's a very important personality that I respect a lot. The conversation was about Ifa theology. Ifa is, of course, is a reality in the Yoruba tradition of West Africa, Nigeria. Now, he said that when a child is born, according to Ifa theology, at the seventh day or at the eighth day thereabout, the elders will gather to consult an oracle. And what the elders are looking for is, what is the mission of this newborn baby? I want you to pay attention, take time to reflect on that. Is that not an attempt to resolve the question that we have today, which is identity crisis? Because if the child can understand his or her mission within this microcosmic, it will never be confused, because it will know what he or she is supposed to do as a contribution to the society where he or she finds himself or herself. What again this is saying is that the system have actually been set up for us so that we cannot be confused. But if we are trying to ride another man's horse, abandoning our own, it is natural that we are confused. So I come back to you, hear me. How does storytelling contribute to what you are doing? How does it make sense to what you are doing? Please share with us.
Thank you, Obehi, and thank you for our audience being very attentive. And what struck me as this conversation continues is what Dr. Thomas said, and that is finding purpose. And the purpose, many times, is in the pain we have gone through. And the story, the identity, the equity, the documentation will continue to evolve. But in relation to storytelling, and where in even in business, is what your purpose is in a season many times relates to the pain. And I relate that to my work, because my work has evolved over 30 years, but presently I started doing this work with widows in terms of, because of what my story's been, and as a surviving, thriving widow, and gaining the resilience I've got from past and present widows. That is my story. And that's why I focus a lot on life coaching, empowering widows. I've had the opportunity on my podcast to speak to widows from different parts of the world. So, in terms of their stories are quite different because they are placed in different contexts of the world. So, their experiences, some of them are still the same, what their forefathers went to as widows, and some are in Western contexts where the stories are similar but are different due to context. So that is my life purpose. My life purpose is to encourage widows. And in some contexts, there's a narrative that states that once you've lost your spouse, a woman has no right to remarry. And that relates, so that is very strong in the work I do. You need to marry, but I say it's what you want and you're ready emotionally is a choice and a step you should take. And being a woman of faith, I'm a Christian woman, I also believe that whatever pain we have, as Gloria Tinu said, we also have to tie it into whatever pain or event that happens in our present life. You tie it back, your survival goes back to your generational story, knowing who you are, who were your forefathers, what did we go through, what have we survived. If we could survive a displacement of people, like the African diaspora, the African narrative, for example, I'm Nigeria here, we have different phases of how Nigerians came to England. But one of the main stories is about during the slave trade. So in spite of that, we take from that and it evolves into how does it relate to me today? And as Gloria rightly said, it is about resilience. My forefathers survived that. So now I'm placed in a context where I might exist as a minority and my host country are the majority, but that should not prevent me from not having access. So identity, I go back to identity. Identity in what you believe is exactly echoing a lot of the profound words of Dr. Marcia Thomas. What is your point of reference? What do you believe in? What is your history? What do you know about your heritage? What have your forefathers survived? Equity, wherever you are placed, wherever you have been displaced, or whether your forefathers have been displaced, and that meant you were born in a nation where you're a minority, your resilience and belief in self still goes back to who you are, which you have to embrace your culture. And saying that, that's why I tend to do monthly workshops on this topic. As much as I do life coaching and I focus on relationships and finance, I also still go back to identity, because a lot of our success is in life and in business, especially, goes back to your generational stories. What are you embracing? What are you denying? Who is telling you a story that is not true? As Dr. Marcia says, we have to know who is telling you the story, where has the source come from? And then thirdly, documentation, the authenticity of the that has been documented. That's why it's important we write our own stories. People who have not experienced our stories should not really be writing our stories, because it will always come from their perspective. And what came to mind also, just to finish up, I'm aware of the time, is evolving. Our stories will continue to evolve. There's our forefather stories, and then there are your stories. You have stories you have in you that you can start to write now. And as Gloria reminded us, and Dr. Marcia and OPI, there's technology. You can speak it into a microphone, you can film it, you can podcast it. There's so much choice. But please document. And I pass it back to you, OBI.
Thank you so much for that, Yemi. That is really beautiful. This is a great conversation that we're having today. It's a great one. Uh, we are also continuously expanding this series. All these conversations that we are having today, they are available as video in our YouTube channel. It was formerly called the African Docs, but now we call it the Diaspora Storytelling Series, because all these videos are going to end up there. Why we are doing that is so that people can have access to it. You see, I've learned a lot just going to internet like YouTube to listen to the conversation of people. You see, speeches that were made hundreds of years ago are still valuable to me. That is how I know that what we are saying today is valuable to me now. So I know how it can be valuable also to other people. When they, maybe by scrolling, because now we are in the business of scrolling, they scroll and they find information like this, they will find it valuable. It is very important. So I really thank all of you that are participating in the conversation. All right, Dr. Marcia, because of time's sake, what would be your final thought here? Then, of course, I will move to Reverend Gloria. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I want to say this to be continued. This conversation needs to be continued. And we really want to look at it from the reference point. And I think we need to dig in some more into what it really means to document, because sometimes we write things because we want to share it, but it's not intentional, it's not focused, and so it doesn't carry the impact that we want it to carry. Thank you for those emojis in the audience. So we want to look, maybe could continue next week and look at reference point, dig into reference point, because reference point is very composite in its framing. It's very, very important. And how do we know align the reference point to the actual becoming and sharing and documenting and reshaping? And that for me is what I would want us to look at. One of the ways that I do that is that as a Christian leadership coach, there are certain traditional rights that are misinterpreted by those who carry it. And so sometimes we carry a burden on ourselves that is really cemented in the letter of the law of the document, and not in the intent or the mercy side. And so those are things that I clarify in my as a Christian leadership coach and consultant. As a Christian life coach, I help my clients, introverted female leaders specifically, but leaders generally, to pivot with power, to reshape and retell their stories in a meaningful, intentional, purposeful way, and in a transformative way. And the transformation begins on the inside. You have to heal before you can heal others. There are persons who maybe need, because when they understand and reshape their story, it gives them a new beginning. That is also the framework under which I operate. And so I want to end by saying I am an author, a Christian leadership consultant, and life coach. I help introverted, faith-based women leaders and leaders in general to create, who struggle with or feel stuck in their life or career relationships to pivot with power, create a new beginning in according to their faith and their purpose. So I help them to clarify and gain confidence in their purpose and begin to live the best life that God intended for them to live and establishing their life script, their divine life script. I help them to pull out their calling and use their narratives, their challenges, and their stories to create these new beginnings so they don't see them as setbacks but opportunities. So it's a mindset, it is a purpose driven, and it is also a faith driven practice that I have. I'm also an author. I want to encourage persons. Some of what I'm talking about is in my recent book, A Leader Like You. And I also want persons to gravitate towards our launch on our new book, Lessons Learned from COVID. In there are different stories and experiences that have been reshaped to help and to empower and to transform persons. And there's also another that talks about how, as parents, we can be subtle incubators for bullies and persons who become discordant notes in society. Thank you so much for hearing, for listening to me, and for I appreciate being a part of this conversation. I say, let's have a great day. And thank you so much, Obehi, for the great work you have been doing and your commitment to this part of your purpose and your calling. I want to thank Jemmy also. I hope I'm pronouncing your name right, Jemmy, or I'm sorry, you can correct me, for your invaluable contribution and your insights. I learned a lot from you. And as usual, Gloria, you are someone who I really admire. And every time you speak, I feel the kindred spirit in us. And I say, together we rise. Have a great day, everyone.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that. Yeah, Dr. Martial is sort of in here. So, of course, it's not like we're going to stay here forever, but we still have a little bit more thing to cover. Yes, of course, at a point we talked about pain. Pain is, I think it's important to also give that a serious consideration because how I explain pain, particularly when we are looking at our improvement, our growth, is that you need to look at it like the diamond. What happened to the diamond and what happened to the gold? When you take them out from the earth surface, they are like every other dust. Only that they need to pass through pain. Because when they pass through pain, or what you might then call the refinement, when you refine them, you process them, they become shiny. But they are the same object, just that now they have passed through pain, through a process of becoming a better version of themselves. At that point, they become shiny. But what if we can also actually do the same thing? In fact, we do the same thing. But this is how it happens to us, that we don't know yet the significance of what is happening to us until maybe after it have happened to us, now we try to figure out things, looking back to what have happened to us, not what is going to happen to us. You see, in a speech by Steve Jobs in Stanford, he was saying that you cannot connect the dot when you are looking forward. You can only connect the dot when you are looking backward, when everything have happened to you. Because then you begin to ask yourself a series of questions. But all this that I'm doing, I've also done that. I'm doing that. What do all this mean? At that point, if you can do a good reflection, you can see that there is actually a pattern that have actually been running across your life since the beginning to this point. And when you can make sense of that, it make a lot of meaning to what you are doing. It happens to me.
I think what makes it, especially for this generation, I think what's quite effective is using technology. Because we now, as much as we want to know what has happened in the past, and also we have to tell our own present stories, this generation is a very hectic generation, maybe because of all the access to so much as technology is for positive, there's a lot of other things that distract us. So just being able to even have a mic and speak into a mic, or you find you want to do a genealogy of your forefathers, you can find all the names and speak into a mic of who came before my father, my dad, my mom. You can actually use technology to leverage this, because the mainly you've documented, there's something very exciting about listening to it as well. And then you can listen to it anywhere. You can listen to it in the car. You can listen to it when you're washing up. Whatever you can do, you can double up and just do that. So I think that's very, and for me, I found it very invaluable as well, because I do have written books, but I still find being able to speak on my podcast is very powerful, because I know that it's a legacy I would leave. And it's even when I talk about the past, I can record it on a podcast. So even when I talk about the work I do with widows, the reason why I'm doing it, there was a time in my life 10 years ago where it was a pain point for me, and I overcame. So I'm now here to empower widows through that pain, especially when the greatest pain we tend to think is when it happens, but it's actually after it's happened. And that's why people say leaving Egypt. When you're now standing on your feet and you're now raising your family on your own, and the reality of financial things come up, the reality of being alone, the reality of having no significant other in your home to confer with, the reality of your children's school fees, the reality of also wanting a new companion. There's a lot of things. So the work I do is to empower widows. And then a lot of people follow me. I've also said I need to incorporate single women. So that's because single women, widows are single women after all, aren't they? So I incorporate that in my work. I do a lot of one-to-one work, and I do workshops. If you follow me only, you find every month I offer a free workshop where I've actually had one where we covered something similar on this topic on embracing culture and traditions. Because culture and tradition links to your past, your present, and your future. Your future is the legacy you're leaving for those that are coming after. It's not necessarily just your children, but for that generation. And we learn, as Dr. Thomas said, even from the good and the bad, we learn from it. From the good, yes, we gain resilience, we gain all of that. But even from the bad, for whatever people have done to our generation, our forefathers, you remind ourselves, because I always say there's a tendency for the oppressed to become oppressors. So we learn that we don't want this to happen. Like how Obehi mentioned Rwanda. We don't, the power of just what was said on the radio, how people, ordinary neighbors started to turn against each other. We don't want those things. These are all things we document, the negatives, because we want to learn from the history that our forefathers have gone to and may not happen also in our generation and the generations to come. And that's it in summary. Thank you, Bia.
All right. I don't know if Reverend Gloratino is ready now.
Yes, I am.
All right. The question is
Thank
waiting
you.
for you.
All right. Thank you so much. And
Welcome.
what a privilege and honor to be with everybody today. This has been quite amazing. And I'm so happy to have you, Sister Yemi, on the team. I remember the things you said when we first started, before we started the audiocast, and you had nothing to even be concerned about. So wonderful to have you here. Well, now we're coming to my area, ancestral lineage healing. The thing about ancestral stories often highlights themes of survival, resistance, and perseverance. And understanding the impact of ancestral trauma is essential in shaping our generational stories. I mean, sometimes in my work, I talk to people who amazingly they talk about situations that they're going through, that their mothers did, their mother's mother, them, and they've never dotted the i's. They've just never made the connection, and they are the face of their generations, their lineage, and how this thing is showing up in their lives. Understanding, I repeat, understanding the impact of ancestral trauma is essential in shaping our generational stories. Ancestral lineage healing involves connecting with our ancestors in a wholesome way, participating in bespoke healing ceremonies, and embracing traditional practices, many of which have been demonized by the West and sadly by many Africans across the world due to misguided, erroneous beliefs and, sad to say, internalized racism. And again, like Sister Marcia said, their reference point, who they're following who told them the stories that they're living the lives of, those stories that have been imprinted upon them. Because of that chaos and loss of identity and just confusion, like Brother Obehi said, we are living in those times right now. Many of these demonized traditions of our people, we need to now hold on to them, embrace them, push back, really push back. The practice, for instance, just the practice of pouring libations to honor your ancestors in the morning. If you just hold a glass of water and you mention your great ancestors, known and unknown, pour the water in a bowl. Just simple symbolisms of that nature. We've been told that those type of things are somehow dark and are to be to be, I don't know, to be feared. Whereas I'm an ordained minister. You know, we have rituals in the church. Let's call that's what rituals are just things that you do on a regular basis that have become part of, ways of identifying certain behaviors. But when when we go to church, and some of the things that we do in church, which are, like I said, rituals. If you talk about it in terms of your spiritual Yoruba spirituality, yes, there are people who abuse it. You know, if you mention that, people run for the hills, and again, it's because of what they've been allowed themselves to believe. And we're now living in times where these are the things that are important for us to begin to pull closer to, I, accept, or at least appreciate. You know, it's not for everybody. You don't have to practice anything that you feel uncomfortable in, but you have to ask yourself, what is it about it that's making you uncomfortable? These are the practices that your forefathers, practice, the traditions, the culture that serve them well. You know, the process of ancestral lineage healing helps us acknowledge and heal past traumas. There are several other healing modalities that can be used alongside this, but the traditional spiritual practices in particular, I can talk about the Yoruba spirituality, takes into consideration those practices we've been born into, that run through our DNA, that focuses on our traditions that our ancestors practice, that serve them well, and that enable them to live in harmony, balance, and peace. And like Brother Obehi says, has now allowed us to stand on their shoulders. These were the practices that they held that kept them strong. There was wisdom, there was intellect, there were so many things that we've lost. Some of us don't even know anything about it, just what we've been told. We should also do research, find out, who are you? I go back. It's funny, all the things that have been said are coming back to my mind. Dr. Marcy said, who are you? You know, you have your reference point. By connecting with our roots, we gain a deeper understanding of ourselves, our heritage, fostering a sense of belonging and resilience. We're living in times where resilience is everything, because so much is coming at us. We don't have time to recover from one thing. Next minute, we're triggered constantly. And sometimes we there's so much of it that we get lost in it. The power of these healing ceremonies can help people to process and release inherited traumas. For instance, the Dagara people of Burkina Faso, they practice grief rituals to help people and communities release unsolved grief and trauma. In contrast here, there's a tendency for people in the West to shy away from any overt display of grief and to even shame people who display grief, suggesting time limits for grief. Community healing circles, podcasts, audio rooms like we're in now, where members can share their stories, support each other, can create a sense of solidarity and collective healing, something the world is desperately in need of. And I conclude by saying ancestral lineage healing plays a crucial role in reshaping generational stories by providing a deeper understanding of identity, fostering personal and community empowerment, and blending traditional narratives with contemporary experiences. I encourage and invite you, beautiful people, to explore your own ancestral roots. Be curious about more traditional healing practices to contribute to the ongoing narratives of the African diaspora and whatever your culture and traditions are. I love hearing about also other traditions and cultures, and I love part of what we're doing here is for us to hear from each other. It's not just one way. It does not need to have any detrimental impact on any other religious practices or beliefs you hold if you don't want it to. On the contrary, as I mentioned earlier, it can enhance what you already have and offer you something more holistic. Remember, by reconnecting with our roots and embracing both traditional and contemporary narratives, we can create a richer, more resilient future for the African diaspora. I thank you all so much. I feel your presence. I always say, even if you're not speaking, by your being here alone, you're putting into that pot. You are part of, the all of what we're doing. The fact that you're here means that you recognize something. You were drawn to this, and I appreciate you so much. You can find me on LinkedIn, and you can also find me on my website, gloriaogunbade.com. If you want to find out more about my program, I would love to have a chat with you. Thank you and bless you. Alafia.
Thank you so much, sister. Thank you so much for that. That is really, really beautiful. That is so beautiful. That is so beautiful. People should never be afraid to find out about themselves. That is what it's essentially all about. That we Africans, it has become acceptable for us to be ashamed to mention our name, to be ashamed, to be afraid, to be scared of the fact that maybe they will not understand me. So in order to make them comfortable, you will dishonor yourself. What kind of a life is that? Why not just be who you are so that they can ask you, but how do I pronounce your name? Because if you can pronounce Czechoslovakia, I don't know anybody that can pronounce that in my village. That would be really complex, complicated, because that is not part of our language system. So for me, I will say, maybe European will not be able to pronounce my name. As simple as 3. How many letters are there? This is me. This is whom I am. I am a product of generation dating back thousands of years. I am not a product of European missionary. You see, I think we should not just for the sake of trying to make people comfortable forget who we are. These are deep conversations that we need to have. We need to talk about ourselves. We are really, really here. Our ancestors are really, really human beings. They have really been here. It also means that without them, we cannot be here. So that the erroneous idea that we need to ban and cast them out is stupid. Because it means that they are not pure, but you are pure. But how is that even possible? How can a clean thing come from an unclean thing? Now, I want to share something with us, something important. You see, the other day I was talking to a guest. I said, let's look at Lagos, for example. Lagos. Why is it so smelly? It's smelly because we are confused. We don't know whose responsibility is it to clean up that water, for example. I said, let's say, for example, Lagos was built according to the tradition of the people that have been there for thousands of years. They know what to do. Because you don't just leave things like that. When I was growing up, I grew up in Esan. In Esan tradition, we have a very clear stratification of the society so that you are not just confused. You know what you are supposed to do. We clean up the community. It is our responsibility. We don't expect anybody to come from anywhere to do it. It is our job. We clean the road. We clean the street. We clean the houses. If somebody was in need of a house, everybody will gather together to build him a house. I have participated. I didn't just read about it. It's called communal work. Life belongs to all of us. We share this together. I am not telling you something I have read from a book. I have lived it. Which means that if we live like that, it will be impossible for a politician to steal the money and go hide it in Switzerland. What are you drinking? What are you drinking? Now we are confused. And when we are confused, we do things that people that are confused do. We don't know what we are supposed to do. So we need to sit on the ground and start crying. So we need to find out who our ancestors are, whose sons and daughters we are. This is important for us so that we can find ourselves in this world. So I really want to thank all of you that have participated here.